Hello, everyone. I'm Jacayla Woolridge, an early childhood education major from Atlanta, Georgia. And today I have the pleasure of interviewing Mr. Joe Beasley. Mr. Beasley is a pillar of the African American community in Atlanta, Georgia. He was known to have been a civil rights advocate. He marched with the likes of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., also Ralph David Abernathy, and Reverend Joseph E. Lowry. Today, he currently continues his fights for people of the African American community and represents people as a lawyer. And so, yeah, I'm just going to ask him a few questions based on my iSearch research project. My iSearch research project focused on how Black music served as the backbone of the civil rights movement throughout the country. And so, yeah, I'm just going to ask him a couple of questions. I felt that he was appropriate because he is, once again, a civil rights advocate. And yeah, so.
Yeah, my name is Joe Beasley, and I serve as the Human Services Director here at the Antioch Baptist Church North with Reverend Cameron Alexander as our pastor. I also serve as the Southern Regional Director for the Rainbow Push Coalition with Reverend Jesse Jackson as our national president. I need to go back a little bit probably. I grew up on a plantation in Fayette County, Georgia. That's about 40 miles south of here during a time when African American people had no rights, that had to be respected by white people. And so from that journey, and we could only go like to the 7th grade in Fayette County at that time. We moved and relocated to Cincinnati, Ohio, where I completed high school and then joined the United States Air Force, serving for the next 20 years across the world. I retired in 1978 and then immediately went to work with Reverend Jesse Jackson as a Southern Director for the Rainbow Push Coalition. Over the last 20 years or so, I've been here at the church with Reverend Alexander as well as working with Jesse Jackson, but then branching out because I see the civil rights movement that was so eloquently started by Dr. Martin Luther King and his associates, lieutenants. But then I think Dr. King had a global vision of the struggle of African people across the years, including, of course, the transatlantic slave trade that brought so many of us to the western part of the world. And of course, about 250 million Africans are now living outside of Africa, with 1 billion people on the continent of Africa itself. And so I, because of the colonialism and all the things that happened from the early 1870s, when the Europeans that went to Berlin, Germany, and decided they would colonialize Africa, which was tantamount to being in slavery. And so God would have it, the civil rights movement happened in the 50s and the 60s, and at the same time that struggle was taking place on the continent of Africa. And so most of Africa was liberated from the colonial system in their 60s, and with the exception of Ethiopia, which just left us in Ethiopia last week, they were never colonized by the Western white people. So I see ahead for young people like yourself a tremendous opportunity to make our world better. We are, of course, have been going, at least in my view, wrong for a very long time. I think some of the things that's happening, like in Brussels, Belgium, with the so-called terrorist attack, and I was scheduled to go through Belgium on the way to Kinshasa in the Congo, but because the airport was closed, I had to go back through Ethiopia. And so, you know, I can't help but to observe that, you know, for 23 years in the Congo, King Leopold II really had the Congo terrorized, and so over 10 million people was killed by King Leopold. So I think some of the things that's happening in Europe, specifically in Brussels, would suggest that God is not being marked, that if you do something that's wrong and injurious, then it will be revisited to you. So I think I've gone a little far afield there, but I just kind of lay that out, and I'm prepared to answer whatever questions you'd like for me to share.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Beasley, for describing how you became involved in the civil rights movement. So next, what I think I want to ask you is, well, I want to focus on my iSearch project. And so my iSearch project focused on Black music and how it served as the backbone of the civil rights movement, right? So my first question that I want to ask you is, what musical icons do you feel had the biggest impact on the civil rights movement, and why?
Well, the soul responds to music, and in the civil rights movement, we had anthems of the march, like "We Shall Overcome" someday, and that was a great song of our struggle, and it propelled us and gave us the courage to move forward in spite of all the odds that presented themselves to us. And I also remember that even before we embarked upon the civil rights movement, music had been so much a part of our struggle, and even on the plantation, and even going back to slavery itself, it was the music that somehow sprung out of the souls of African people in the most adverse circumstance imaginable. But it was because of the inspiration that's coming from God and through music that sustained us in our struggle. So I think that you're right on point. And that music is still a part of what we're trying to do, because it just lifts our spirits from when they're really down. And so as dealing with some of the modern music and artists, I'm not that up date on it, but I do know it's a part of our struggle, and I know that it will lead us on into the future.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you for that input. And also, I would like to ask you, what is one of your favorite songs personally, and would you like to sing a tune for our audience?
I'm not a singer.
Okay.
But one of the songs that my mother's favorite song was "Precious Lord, Take My Hand, Lead Me On and Let Me Stand."
Is that by Mahalia Jackson by chance?
Well, Mahalia came on a little later on. But certainly, I very much taken by Mahalia Jackson. I think she's a great lady that meant so much, and I think her prominence and significance is yet to be fully understood and appreciated.
Yes, thank you for that. And also, last but not least, I would like to ask, what message do you wish to share with the Black community today, and especially our audience of young people?
Yes, well, to the young people, I'm just more encouraged than ever. A lot of people like to say that our young people are not a part of, they're not focused on it, but I was very recently with a group of young people that around the theme of Black Lives Matter. And I think it's a group that is being now, that is accepted as an extension of where we're heading. I don't know whether you're as radicalized as they are, but I've been delighted to join the young people that says that Black Lives Matter. I remember really last time that I was involved with them to try to get the attention that everything is not well in America. We're not going to demand and remain silent as our young men, especially being shot down like rabbits and dogs in this country. So I joined the team of Black Lives Matter. I guess it was almost 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. They decided, and I joined them, they decided to get the attention that we would close down Lenox Road and Peachtree Street, right there at Lenox Mall. And their determination was such they were able, in a very creative way, to tie themselves together. And then when we gave the signal that we would close down those two business intersections in town, they
I'm
were
sure that would
so
shut a lot of things down.
Yeah, they were so intertwined until it took the fire department over an hour to remove them. So it got the attention of the business community that you just can't mistreat people, and especially black people,
Right.
and expect to get away with it.
Right.
And so I applaud whether it's the movement of young people on the campuses, the movement of the more radicalized young people that have joined in the course. The fact that black lives, and in fact all lives matter. We must be respected. And so knowing you ever since you was a baby, I'm so encouraged to see that you're on the battlefield. I know your grandmother, of course, worked so closely with your grandmom and of course your mom, and then your great grandmom. So you're in the great tradition of the struggle, and we rest assured that our victory has already been recorded. It's just a matter that somehow at some point that the world, we could see ourselves as one people.
Yes.
And when that day comes, I believe that we will have, some peace in the world.
Thank you so much, Mr. Beasley. And now we have, for our audience, you have met and you've heard from Mr. Joe Beasley. And you just got to see him firsthand. And thank you so much once again for this interview. So you guys are going to see a picture of us next.